Now, if you've been watching my flashlight reviews, you may notice that I don't cover Fenix flashlights very often. Not that that's a bad brand by any stretch. In fact, it's one of the higher quality brands out there, but not too many of them have appealed to me until now. This is the PD25R. It's a relatively new flashlight, and on paper, they're hitting almost every single checkbox that I'm looking for. The question is it going to replace my daily driver and become my new go-to flashlight? Well, in this video, I hope to answer that and all other questions relating to it. So let's go ahead and get started. Now this is the Fenix PD25R. Now in the past we've done flashlight reviews where we run through a bunch of different stats, and we're going to do the same thing here, but we're going to change the order in which we address them, and I think you'll see why in just a few minutes. So let's start for a second and talk about the quality of this flashlight. The one thing I am noticing, and I'm wondering if I just missed it completely when reviewing other Fenix flashlights, the fit and finish here is a little bit above what I've seen in production flashlights so far. And it's done in really subtle ways. Now it looks pretty much the same as every other 3 out of 5 star flashlights. But what I feel is particularly different about this and maybe other Fenix flashlights is the attention to detail on the threading. This feels smoother and has finer threads than I have seen on other flashlights. And that's true not only for the USB-C collar, which is right there, but also on the tail. Much, much finer threading here as well. And it's very, very smooth. Very, very nicely done. So this is going to make it a little bit better in waterproofing than some of those other flashlights. So I'm actually going to go with my instincts here and actually give it a 4 out of 5 stars. There just seems to be a high attention to detail for this particular flashlight. And so I may change my mind on this, but I do feel like it's maybe a slight half step above what I've been seeing so far. So I am going to give this actually a 4 out of 5. I feel pretty good about that. Now let's talk for a second about output. Output on this flashlight is actually far more impressive than it may seem on paper. It says the maximum output of the PD25R is 800 lumens, but that doesn't tell the entire story, because although it does have only 800 lumens, and that on paper that might seem less than the 1200 of the Baton 3, this light has 6900 candela and this light has over 15,000. What does that mean? Well, it translates to the reach that this flashlight has. The maximum reach this has at max power is 250 meters compared to, well, far less for the Baton 3. In fact, this has better reach than even my Warrior Mini 2 with 1700 lumens of output. And I'm hoping you can understand this principle when I show these beam shots of all 4 of these flashlights. You can see that what you're seeing with lumens is the area of light, and the intensity within that beam pattern is the candela rating. So there's actually more light intensity in that smaller beam pattern of the Fenix than there is in either the Warrior Mini 2 or in the Olight Baton 3. Really, really impressive. The other thing I like about this light that I'm going to interject in this output, section is that this flashlight can use not only the protected 16340s like the one it comes with, but also can use a CR123. And this is something you can buy off the shelf. Now that is not true or not something that any of these other flashlights can do, whether it's 21700, 18650, or the normal 16340. These can't buy any of those standard batteries. In fact, these can't even use batteries from other manufacturers, but you get the general idea here. This has incredible versatility as a day-to-day flashlight and is really winning me over because of it. It has the reach that I'm looking for, the output I'm looking for. What about the rest of the stats? Now the next stat we need to talk about is runtime. So I usually am interested in runtime when it comes to the lowest mode. In this case, the lowest mode on this flashlight is 5 lumens, or they're calling it eco. Now you're going to get eco mode for a maximum of 70 hours, or just under 3 days, okay? Now that may seem really impressive, but you have to remember that things like the Baton 3 and of course the ThruNite T1S, which is even more impressive, these flashlights have over 20 days and 26 days, 27 days of runtime on their lowest mode. But their lowest mode is 0.5 lumens and around 1 lumen. So quite a bit different when you're talking about the total output. And in fact, the lowest mode of this has over 90 candela, which is a surprisingly high amount. So let me show you. That's the eco mode here, where this is the lowest mode from the ThruNite, and this is the lowest mode from the Olight. So you can see there's a pretty substantial difference in output, and there is actually nothing in between for the Baton 3. When you go up to the next level, the Fenix absolutely crushes it. And the same thing is true with the ThruNite T1S. When you go up to their next outputs, which are just 3 or 4 times above the 5 lumen mode, they don't last as long. So this is somewhere in the middle. And actually, I really, really do like the 5 lumen mode on the PD25R. So really good job. And based on the actual output and runtime, I would give this between a 3 and a 4-star rating on runtime. So the next category we need to talk about is versatility. Now the PD25R is great because in addition to having the ability to use multiple fuels, it also has a reversible pocket clip. So if it has just a reversible pocket clip, that would give it a 3 out of 5, but because it's able to use multiple different fuel sources, it's going to get a 4 out of 5, which is absolutely excellent. I am currently not assigning additional points for having a rechargeable port, but I would guess that that's going to be something that people are going to be very happy with as well. You could even argue that it could get more than 4.5 stars. I would probably even give it a 5 if it could tail stand, which it cannot because the button is just a little proud of the end. That was one thing I think they could change that would immediately improve the design just a smidgen and would be a great addition. So really well done on that regard. Now the next category we need to discuss is the user interface, and this is going to make or break the PD25R for you and your decision making. This user interface is identical to the one you will find on the 36R, which is a much, much bigger flashlight. So if you love that user interface, you're going to love this as well. But I'm going to tell you right now, I don't love it. And it's a little bit on the frustrating side because everything else about this flashlight is damn near perfect, including the spacing used in this flashlight. It goes from 5 to 30 to 150 to 350 to 800. It doesn't get any better than that. They have perfectly spaced these outputs. I should also mention, and I try to every time I see it, this Fenix makes the best manual that exists, and they are completely transparent about when the different outputs drop. I love that about this brand. Sorry, little side there. The user interface kills me, and I'm going to try to explain it as best I can why that is the case. So the tail switch activates whatever is memorized last, right? Now it's currently on its eco mode, but I need it on its highest mode. Well, in order to do that, I have to press the button on the tail, and then I have to cycle through all 5 modes. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I use it around and I turn it off. Now when I turn it back on, it's going to come in on high. But what if it's pitch black? I don't want to blow out my vision, and I don't need the maximum brightness. Can I do it without blowing out my vision? The answer is no. So I would have to cover up the flashlight and then maybe press it so it comes in on low. Now that is probably a small thing. You're probably gonna be like, why are you making such a big deal about this? Well, I don't know. I'm such a snob on flashlights. I freely admit it. I'm so spoiled. And I would love to see a slightly modified user interface that lets me access both the highest and the lowest. Ideally, what I want is to have the tail switch only work with turbo, so I know what I'm getting when I press that button, and have the side switch cycle through the lowest 4 modes. And doing that would require me to maybe hold, press 2 or 3 seconds, right? As it sits, it's not as useful to me as something like the Warrior Mini 2 from a user interface standpoint, okay? It does, however, have the battery versatility. And that's what still has me thinking about this flashlight as a change in my daily driver. The other thing I just want to bring up, and I'm really curious about, this has a strobe mode, but the way you access it is really strange. You press the tail switch, and then you have to then hold press the side switch to get access to the strobe. I'm not sure the purpose of a strobe that is hidden in that way. Usually when I need a strobe, I'm not thinking clearly, and so I don't want it to be complicated. And if it is complicated, it's probably not going to be all that useful. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know down in the comments. Am I missing something here? Could I be just not understanding? Let me know. But yeah, the user interface is definitely going to be the make or break. Had this had a more similar interface where I could access the lowest mode, the Eco, and the highest mode from off, this would have been probably the flashlight of the year, in my opinion. As it is, it's still absolutely fantastic. It's just missing that one little piece. So with that said, where does this rank? This is probably a 3 out of 5 star user interface. Now, I will freely admit that this is not the user interface for myself, but many others will like it. And at the end of the day, Fenix is going to have to make flashlights for their consumer base, not necessarily for the flashlight snob that I am. So I commend them. They've done a fantastic job with this flashlight. And based on everything I'm seeing, the user interface, the perfect spacing, it's just the versatility of it. It's really, really well done. So yeah, nice job. I don't think I've ever been so close to getting everything I wanted in a flashlight and still had the mark missed completely. The user interface is a killer for me personally. Because I get up early in the morning, I needed to come in on that lowest output and not blow out my vision. But I also want to have access to the highest mode in the case of emergency. I need both. And because of that, it's a struggle for it to straight up replace the Warrior Mini 2, which is usually my most common and most carried flashlight. But it could. It could with just that small change of a user interface. Everything else about this, in my opinion, is even better than this flashlight. It has non-proprietary batteries. In fact, it can even take a CR123. It has a collar that completely protects the USB-C port. It has a nice rubber tail button, which I prefer. It has a great pocket clip. This reversible pocket clip is fantastic. It goes in the pocket exactly the way I like it. Really, it's almost to the point where I want to try to force myself to get used to the user interface, but I know in my heart that it could be better. That's all I'm asking from Fenix. If they do that, I'll switch over completely. This is a fantastic offering and is highly recommended. So I want to thank you for your time. This was a really interesting review for me, even better than I expected. So thank you, Fenix, again for sending this out. I appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon.